everyone, I am Teresa, and I am in week 4 of school, and I read you chapter 4 of Amelia and Bedelia, Dances Off. A week ago, after that I'll read you chapter 5. Chapter 5. You say flamenco, I say flamingo. The next week when Amelia and Bedelia arrived at Donna's, it looked as though Studio 1 was being remodeled. She almost crashed into Brad and Alex, who were carrying a sheet of plywood. Watch it, shouted Alex. Amelia and Bedelia jumped out of their way. Brad and Alex placed the plywood on the floor right next to another sheet of plywood that they had already positioned. These are 3 fans. Amelia and Bedelia watched the pieces of plywood like a hawk. It did not do a thing. It just lay there on the floor. She wasn't sure what she had expected, but this was super boring. I think 2 sheets will be enough, said Donna. Thanks, guys. Now Amelia and Bedelia was completely confused. You're putting sheets on boards? Asked Amelia and Bedelia. Who would want to sleep on wood? Donna laughed. She stepped on one board and then the other, bouncing lightly to make sure they were stable. These are sheets of plywood to protect my floor from our guest dancers today. They must be huge. How can dancers hurt a floor? Asked Amelia and Bedelia. How heavy are they? Oh, they're light on their feet, said Donna, but they hit the ground very hard with their heels. Harder than tap dancing? Asked Amelia and Bedelia. This is a little hawk. This is Amelia and Bedelia looking at the 2 sheets of plywood. This is Amelia and Bedelia thinking that they're going to sleep on plywood with sheets on them. Much harder, said Donna. These are flamenco dancers. Ha, said Brad. This isn't dance class, this is a nature course. First we get to be grass blowing in the wind, and now we get to watch dancing birds. Birds? Dancing? Said Donna. What are you talking about? She gave Brad a bewildered look. You know those goofy-looking pig birds with the big black beaks? The ones that stand on one leg, he said. People stick plastic ones on their lawns. My sister loves those things. I think because Donna exploded with laughter. Donna exploded with laughter. The Hernandez twins were laughing so hard they could barely speak. Brad just stood there looking very confused. What? Donna put her arm around Brad. Oh, honey, she said, the bird you're describing is a flamingo. This is a dance called the flamenco with a C instead of a G. Just then a couple came through the door of the studio. The man was carrying a guitar and the woman wore a lacy red shawl over a long black dress that was full and frilly at the bottom. This is Alex and Alexandra and Amelia, Bedelia, and Donna on the sheets of plywood. These are flamingos. This word says flamingo birds. And these are the 2 couples walking in the door. And this says flamenco dancers. Flamenco dancers. Everyone, this is Senor and Senora. Espana, said Donna. Pull up a piece of floor and sit down. Amelia, Bedelia, Alex, Alexandra, Willow, Brad, and Grace sat in a circle around the plywood and listened. Flamencos come from the south of Spain, said Senor Espana. It combines music and songs and dance to produce rhythmic patterns with precision. When Amelia Bedelia heard the word precision, she could not contain herself. She put her hand in the air. But don't you need a drum for that? She asked. There are other ways to play precision, said Senor Espana, smiling. He strummed on his guitar and then rapped on his shiny wooden surface with his knuckles. Like that, he said. And like this, said Senora Espana. She raised her arms above her head and clapped out the same sequence of beats with her hands. From the top to the bottom, she said. Then she produced the same pattern by striking her heels on the plywood floor. Senor Espana played his guitar. The best way to show you how it all works together is with a dance, he said. He began playing a beautiful melody, and his wife began clapping her hands and striking her heels very hard on the floor at the same time. This is a guitar. These are drums. And this is Senor's wife. Grace covered her ears. Amelia Bedelia loved it. She felt like she was sitting inside a giant popcorn popper. When the dance was done, everyone clapped and then laughed because it sounded like the dance was still going on. They could hear the echo of the precision in their ears. The Espanas began dancing again, much slower this time. Senora Espana held up her hands and demonstrated her claps in slow motion. The class joined in. As they got used to the rhythm, the guitar and the dancing got faster, and soon their clapping sounded like applause. Suddenly, the Espanas stopped playing and dancing and froze, but the class kept clapping. They both bowed and said, thank you, everyone laughed. Senora Espana took Willow, Gracie, Alexandra, and Amelia Bedelia to one side of the plywood floor to teach them some flamenco steps. This is someone's feet tapping on the plywood. This is Amelia Bedelia inside a popcorn popper with words saying pop, pop, pop. And this is someone's hands clapping together. And this is Donna and everyone looking at the flamenco dancers. Sonora Espana actually had nails driven into the bottom of her shoes, but the girls put on their tap-dancing shoes and they still managed to make a lot of noise. Sonora Espana gave Brad and Alex a short lesson on flamenco guitar techniques and beats. There was a time for one more dance. This time, Sonora Espana played the guitar and danced as well. First, Sonora Espana would tap out a rhythm, then he would dance to an answer to it with the guitar, uniting the two sequences of sound. Sonora Espana unfurled a fan and used it to draw attention to the movement of her hand. As Amelia Bedelia sat there watching the Espanas dance, she thought about the fact that flamenco was amazing but hot. If she had that fan, she would use it to cool herself off. She leaned over to Brad. "What are you thinking?" she whispered. Brad was quiet for a moment. Then he whispered, "I think my sister is right. They would look great on our lawn." Amelia Bedelia covered her mouth to keep from laughing out loud. This is a tap shoe. This is Sonora with her fan. This is a flamingo. And this is Amelia Bedelia talking to Brad, with Brad thinking that Espanas would look good in their backyard. Okay, bye everyone. I'll read you chapter 6 tomorrow.